The fall of the Meridians. The crystalline spires of Meridia Prime had stood for 10,000 years, their surfaces etched with the living art of generations. Each tower was a monument to the Meridians' mastery of crystal manipulation, their very homes serving as vast canvases for their ever-changing artistic expressions. But now, those same spires reflected only emptiness, their once vibrant patterns fading as their creators succumbed to an invisible enemy. Dr. Amara Voss stood in her laboratory, her four-fingered hands trembling as she reviewed the latest data. Another sector of the city had gone silent. The plague that had emerged from the planet's northern continent 6 months ago was spreading faster than ever. It attacked the Meridians' unique crystal-infused biology, turning their semi-transparent skin cloudy before shutting down their neural pathways. "Elder Luminor," she called out, her voice echoing through the nearly empty research center. "The results from Sector 7 are conclusive. The modified treatment failed." The Elder's crystalline form caught the light as he entered, but his usual inner glow had dimmed considerably. Like all Meridians, his body incorporated living crystal matrices that allowed their species to create their remarkable artistic works. Now, those same crystals were becoming their undoing. "How many remain?" he asked, though they both knew the answer. "Less than 2 million, spread across our 3 primary cities," Amara replied. "The colony worlds report similar infection rates. At current progression, 3 months, perhaps 4, before total species extinction." Luminor moved to the observation window, gazing out at the city he had helped guide for over 2 centuries. The crystal spires still sang their subtle harmonies as the wind passed through them, but fewer and fewer artists remained to modify their songs. The Meridians had always believed that art was not just culture, but the very essence of life itself. Every surface, every structure on their world was designed to be both functional and beautiful, a canvas for continuous creative expression. "The Galactic Council?" he asked, though the slump of his shoulders suggested he already knew the answer. Still no response beyond their initial quarantine order. Amara's voice carried equal parts exhaustion and bitterness. "The Axorans claim their biological sciences are incompatible with our crystal-based physiology. The Vrel Collective cited resource constraints. The others," she trailed off. The truth was, the advanced species that dominated galactic politics had always viewed the Meridians with a mixture of confusion and dismissal. The Meridians' dedication to artistic expression over technological advancement meant they had little to offer in traditional trade. Their cities might be beautiful, but they had no powerful weapons, no revolutionary sciences to share. "There is one more possibility," Amara said hesitantly. A signal was received from the outer rim. A species calling themselves humans responded to our general distress call. Luminor turned, his crystal matrix briefly flaring with interest. "I am unfamiliar with this species. They're new to interstellar travel," Amara explained, bringing up a holographic display. "They only achieved FTL capability 30 years ago. Their technology is primitive by Galactic Council standards." The display showed images of human cities, angular, asymmetrical, a chaos of styles and materials that would have been jarring to most Meridians. But Luminor studied them with increasing interest, noting how even their simplest structures often incorporated decorative elements that served no practical purpose. "They create art," he observed, "not as we do, but they understand the need for beauty alongside function." Amara nodded. Their message was different from the others. They didn't ask about resources or technology exchanges. They simply asked what help we needed and how quickly they could arrive. A notification chimed. Another sector reporting increased infection rates. Time was running out. The plague had already consumed their largest population centers. Soon, there would be nothing left of their civilization but empty crystal cities, their songs silenced forever. "They are young," Luminor mused, "inexperienced in galactic politics. Perhaps that is exactly what we need." He straightened, some of his old authority returning to his voice. Send them our data. All of it. If they are willing to help, we must be willing to trust. As Amara prepared the transmission, she glanced at the latest medical readings. The plague was mutating again, becoming more aggressive. The humans would need to be brilliant, lucky, or both to find a solution where the Meridians had failed. But they had offered help when no one else would, and that alone made them different from every other species they had encountered. "Message away," she reported. "Their nearest research vessel estimates arrival in 17 days. Luminor nodded, turning back to the window. The sun was setting, casting rainbow refractions through the crystal spires. It was the kind of moment that would normally inspire dozens of artists to modify the crystal's patterns, creating new harmonies to match the changing light. But the spires remained static, unchanged. 17 days, he repeated softly. Let us hope these humans are as unique as they appear to be. We have nothing left to lose, and perhaps something remarkable to gain. In her lab, Amara began preparing samples and data cores for the humans' arrival. She had no way of knowing if their primitive technology could handle the complexity of Meridian biology, or if they could work quickly enough to save her people. But as she worked, she found herself humming an old Meridian melody, a song of hope and new beginnings. The crystal walls caught the sound, amplifying and transforming it, sending it spiraling through the empty corridors like a prayer. Somewhere out there, a ship of humans was racing toward them, defying the judgment of far more advanced civilizations. Whether they succeeded or failed, they had already shown something remarkable. The willingness to try when others would not. Perhaps that counted for more than all the advanced technology in the galaxy. Bridge across the stars. The human research vessel Magellan dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Meridian system, its hull still radiating heat from the journey. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the main view screen, taking in her first sight of Meridia Prime. The planet's surface glittered like a jewel, its crystal cities catching and reflecting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. It's beautiful, she breathed, before turning back to her team. And we're going to save it. The assembled group of human scientists and doctors represented Earth's best hope of helping the Meridians. They had been chosen not just for their expertise, but for their ability to think creatively, to see connections others might miss. Dr. Chen had handpicked each one, ignoring the skeptics who said a relatively primitive species like humanity had no business trying to solve a problem that had stumped more advanced civilizations. Final approach vectors coming in, announced Captain Rivera from the bridge. Meridian control reports were cleared for emergency docking at their main medical facility. As the Magellan descended through the atmosphere, Dr. Chen reviewed the preliminary data one more time. The Meridian plague was unlike anything humanity had encountered, a pathogen that somehow interfered with the crystal matrices that were integral to Meridian biology. More advanced species had declared it too alien, too complex to understand with their standardized approaches. But humans had been dealing with the impossible for their entire history. The landing was smooth, and within hours the human team had set up their equipment in the Meridian Research Center. Dr. Amara Voss watched with barely concealed amazement as the humans unpacked what must have seemed like archaic technology to her advanced species. "You still use physical microscopes?" she asked, her crystal form catching the light as she moved closer to examine one. Dr. Chen smiled, adjusting the instrument. "Sometimes the old ways see things the new ways miss. We've found that combining multiple approaches often reveals patterns that more advanced, but more specialized equipment might overlook." The human team worked tirelessly, setting up their makeshift lab alongside the Meridian's more advanced facilities. They'd brought everything from electron microscopes to basic Petri dishes, from quantum scanners to simple blood test kits. Nothing was too primitive or too advanced if it might help them understand the plague. "Your approach is unusual," Elder Luminor observed, watching as the humans began their first series of tests. The Axorans insisted on using only their most advanced diagnostic tools. "And they failed," Dr. Chen replied matter-of-factly, not looking up from her microscope. "Sometimes you need to step backward to move forward. Now, Could you tell me more about how your species interacts with these crystal matrices? Not the scientific explanation. Tell me what it feels like." The elder seemed surprised by the question. No other species had asked about the subjective experience of meridian biology. As he began to describe the sensation of connecting with the living crystals, of using them to create art and music, Dr. Chen's team listened intently, taking notes and asking questions that seemed to have nothing to do with medical science. Days passed in a blur of activity. The humans worked in shifts, analyzing data, running tests, and most importantly, talking with their meridian patients. They asked about art, about music, about the way the crystal cities sang in the wind. They studied healthy crystal matrices and infected ones, comparing not just their structure but their resonance patterns. "Look at this," Dr. James Wilson called out on the 5th day, pointing to a display showing overlapping wave patterns. "The infected crystals aren't just deteriorating. They're being forced out of harmony." Dr. Chen rushed over, her eyes widening as she studied the data. It's not just a biological attack. It's disrupting the fundamental frequencies that allow the meridians to interface with their crystal matrices, like forcing an instrument to play out of tune until it breaks. Amara moved closer, her own crystal matrix flickering with interest. But our most advanced scanners showed no significant frequency variations. "Because they were looking at the wrong scale," Dr. Chen explained, excitement creeping into her voice. "We only found it by comparing recordings of your city's harmonics from before the plague with current readings. The change is subtle, but it's there. A discordant note spreading through your entire crystalline network." The humans' primitive equipment, combined with their willingness to look beyond pure medical data, had revealed something all the advanced diagnostic tools had missed. The plague wasn't just a disease, it was changing the fundamental resonance of the meridian's crystal matrices. "Can you stop it?" Elder Luminor asked, hope tinging his voice for the first time in months. Dr. Chen shared a look with her team before responding. "Not yet. But now we know what we're fighting, and more importantly, we know where to look for a solution. We need to stop thinking of this as just a medical problem. We need to think of it as a symphony that's gone out of tune." As if to emphasize her words, a distant harmony drifted through the research center, the crystal spires singing in the evening wind. Dr. Chen closed her eyes, listening intently. When she opened them again, there was a fierce determination in her gaze. "Your cities aren't just beautiful," she said to the elder. "They're part of who you are, how your species connects to these crystal matrices. And I think they might be the key to saving you. We've been looking at individual patients, but we need to think bigger. Your entire civilization is a grand symphony. And somewhere in that music, we'll find our answer." The meridians in the research center stared at her, their crystal forms catching and refracting light in complex patterns. To them, these humans must have seemed impossibly primitive, with their physical microscopes and basic scanning tools. But they had seen something that all the advanced species had missed, simply because they were willing to look at the problem from every angle, to combine art and science, old and new. As the team began recalibrating their equipment for this new approach, Dr. Chen caught Amara watching her with an unreadable expression. "You were never going to find the answer with just medical science, were you?" the meridian scientist asked. "To understand a species, you have to understand what makes them unique," Dr. Chen replied. "Your connection to these crystals, your art, your music, it's not just cultural, it's fundamental to who you are. Sometimes the best science comes from asking the simplest questions, not just how does it work, but why does it matter?" Outside, the crystal spires continued their eternal song, but now the humans listened with new understanding. Somewhere in that harmony lay the key to saving an entire civilization, if they could only learn to hear it in time. The price of compassion. The holographic message from the Axaran High Council filled the Magellan's command center, its harsh blue light casting strange shadows across the assembled faces of both humans and meridians. The Axaran representatives' multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of agitation in their species. The human intervention in this matter is unacceptable, the representative declared. You lack the technological sophistication to properly contain this contagion. Your presence poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Captain Rivera stood firm, her weathered face showing no sign of intimidation despite the Axaran's imposing presence. With all due respect, Counselor, we've made more progress in 2 weeks than anyone else has in months. Primitive progress based on obsolete methodology. The Axaran dismissed. We have reviewed your approach. You are using techniques abandoned by advanced civilizations centuries ago. The risk of catastrophic failure is less than the certainty of doing nothing, Dr. Chen interrupted, stepping forward. While the council debates, the Meridians are dying. We're staying. The Axaran's color shifted to a deeper blue. Then you leave us no choice. All trade routes to Earth will be suspended. Your colonies will be denied access to advanced technology. The human species will be isolated until you withdraw from this situation. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the room in tense silence. Elder Luminar's crystal matrix pulsed with concern as he turned to the humans. We cannot ask you to sacrifice your species' advancement for our sake. Captain Rivera shared a look with Dr. Chen before responding. They're not asking us to withdraw to protect the galaxy. They're trying to hide something. She turned to her communications officer. How many similar warnings have we received? 7 in the last 3 days. The officer reported. The Vrel Collective, the Zin Empire, even the Tory Federation. All with variations on the same message. Dr. Chen frowned, her mind racing. She'd been so focused on the plague's unusual properties that she hadn't stopped to ask why so many advanced species were desperate to prevent its cure. Her eyes widened as the pieces began falling into place. It's too perfect, she whispered. The way it targets only the crystal matrices, how it spreads through your harmonic networks. This isn't a natural plague. It's engineered. The revelation sent a shock through the room. Amara's crystal form flickered rapidly, a sign of intense emotion in her species. But who would create such a thing? And why target us? Because you're different. Dr. Wilson spoke up from his workstation. Every other spacefaring race focuses on technological advancement, military power, economic growth. But your species chose a different path. Art, beauty, harmony. You're living proof that there's another way to build a civilization. The implications were staggering. If the plague was artificial, then the advanced species' refusal to help wasn't just callousness, it was complicity. Their warnings about human intervention weren't about protecting the galaxy. They were about preventing anyone from discovering the truth. We need to move faster, Dr. Chen declared, already heading for the lab. Not just to save your people, but to expose what's really happening here. But as she reached the door, alarms began blaring throughout the research center. On the main screen, multiple ships dropped out of FTL on the edge of the system. An Axaran enforcement fleet, heavily armed, and heading straight for Meridia Prime. They're not going to wait for us to withdraw, Captain Rivera realized grimly. They're here to force the issue. The Magellan was a research vessel, barely armed, and no match for even one Axaran warship, let alone a fleet. But as the humans looked at their Meridian allies, at the people they'd come to know and respect over the past weeks, not one of them suggested retreating. How much time do you need? Rivera asked Dr. Chen. We're close to something. The frequency variations we detected, they're not just symptoms, they're the key to the whole thing. Give me 12 hours. You'll have them, Rivera promised, though no one in the room could imagine how she planned to hold off an advanced alien fleet for that long. Amara stepped forward, her crystal matrix glowing with newfound strength. Perhaps we can help. Our cities may not be weapons, but their crystalline networks can be recalibrated. If we combine your understanding of harmonics with our ability to control the crystal matrices. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up as she grasped what Amara was suggesting. The same networks that made the Meridians vulnerable to the plague could be turned into a defense system, not through traditional weapons, but through the very art and harmony that defined their civilization. Two species working together, Elder Luminor mused, his own matrix beginning to pulse with renewed energy, each contributing what the other lacks. Perhaps that is what our attackers fear most of all. As the Axaran fleet drew closer, humans and Meridians raced against time, working to turn an entire crystal city into both a shield and a revelation. They weren't just fighting to save one species anymore. They were fighting to expose a truth that could shake the foundations of galactic society. And somewhere in the vast crystalline networks of Meridia Prime, in the intersection of art and science, of primitive determination and advanced harmony, lay the key to both salvation and justice. They just had to find it before their time ran out. Hidden strengths. The crystal spires of Meridia Prime hummed with new purpose as Dr. Chen and Amara worked frantically in the central control chamber. Around them, both humans and Meridians moved in coordinated chaos, transforming the city's artistic networks into something never before attempted. A defense system based on harmony rather than destruction. The resonance patterns are holding, Amara reported, her crystal matrix pulsing with concentrated energy. But the Axaran fleet will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Dr. Chen nodded, her fingers flying over both human and Meridian interfaces. The plan they'd devised was either brilliant or desperate, possibly both. They were attempting to use the city's crystalline network not just as a shield, but as a way to broadcast the truth about the engineered plague to every corner of the galaxy. "Dr. Wilson, how's the analysis coming?" she called out. James Wilson barely looked up from his workstation, where he was comparing the plague's frequency patterns with known weapon signatures. "Got it. The plague's base code. It's definitely Axaran. But there are traces of at least 3 other species' technology. This wasn't just one civilization's work. A conspiracy," Captain Rivera concluded grimly. "The most advanced species working together to eliminate a civilization that chose a different path." Elder Luminor's usually serene features hardened. "Not just to eliminate us, to ensure no other species would dare to prioritize art and harmony over military might and technological dominance." The Axaran fleet drew closer, their weapons charging. On the main display, their ships appeared as dark blots against the star-filled sky, a stark contrast to the gleaming crystal cities below. The lead ship broadcast another warning. "This is your final opportunity to withdraw," the Axaran commander declared. "Comply immediately or face the consequences." Captain Rivera stepped forward, her voice steady. "We know what you did. The plague wasn't natural. It was engineered by the Axaran High Council, along with the other advanced species. We have proof." There was a moment of silence before the Axaran responded, their tone notably colder. "You have proof of nothing. And soon, you will have nothing at all. Open fire." The first energy blasts from the Axaran fleet streaked toward the city, but instead of impacting, they'd met something unexpected. The crystal spires began to sing. Dr. Chen and Amara's work had transformed the entire crystalline network into a resonating chamber. The energy weapons were caught in a complex web of harmonics, their power dispersed and transformed. The city itself became a symphony of light and energy, each blast absorbed and redirected through the crystal matrices. "It's working," Amara exclaimed, her form glowing brighter with each successful deflection. "The harmonic shield is holding." But defense wasn't their only goal. As the Axarans continued their assault, each impact added to the growing symphony of energies coursing through the crystal network. Dr. Chen watched the readings carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. "Now," she commanded, "broadcast everything." The humans and Meridians worked in perfect coordination, channeling the combined energy of the Axaran weapons and the city's crystals into a massive transmission. The proof of the engineered plague, the conspiracy behind it, the signatures of every species involved. All of it was broadcast on frequencies that every civilization in the galaxy could receive. The Axaran fleet suddenly ceased fire, but it was too late. The truth was spreading faster than light itself, carried on waves of harmony through the very networks the advanced species had built their power upon. "We're receiving responses," the communications officer announced, his voice rising with excitement. "Other civilizations are picking up the transmission. The Centauri, the Rigelians, dozens of emerging species, they're all getting the data." The Axaran commander's image appeared again, but this time there was fear in their multiple eyes. "Stop this transmission immediately. You don't understand the consequences." "We understand perfectly," Dr. Chen interrupted. "You tried to destroy an entire civilization because they proved there was another way to advance, through art and harmony rather than power and domination. But in doing so, you proved something else, that sometimes the greatest strength comes from working together, from combining different approaches rather than forcing everyone to follow the same path." As if to emphasize her words, the Crystal City's song reached a crescendo. The harmonic shield wasn't just defending against the Axaran weapons anymore. It was creating something new, a symphony of resistance and revelation that could be felt as much as heard. The Axaran fleet hung motionless in space, caught between retreat and escalation, but it was already too late for them to hide the truth. Across the galaxy, other civilizations were responding to the broadcast, expressing shock and outrage at the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed the Meridians. "More ships entering the system," Captain Rivera reported, but her tense expression quickly turned to relief. "They're not Axaran. The Centauri, the Rigelians, they're coming to help." Dr. Chen turned to Amara and Elder Luminar, seeing in their glowing forms the same hope she felt. They had done more than just save the Meridian civilization. They had exposed a truth that would change the galaxy forever. "Your art saved you," she told them softly. "Not in spite of your dedication to harmony and beauty, but because of it. You just needed someone to help you see it in a new way." The Crystal Spires continued their song, but now it was no longer a defense. It was a celebration. Humans and Meridians had proven that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. Not from forcing conformity, but from embracing different ways of seeing and being. And as ships from other civilizations arrived to stand with them, it became clear that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that the Meridians had known all along, that there is power in art, in harmony, and in the courage to choose a different path. Unity's dawn. 3 months after the confrontation with the Axaran fleet, Meridia Prime's crystal spires shimmered with renewed vitality. The plague that had threatened to extinct an entire species was finally being eradicated, thanks to the combined efforts of human innovation and Meridian crystal harmonics. But the healing went far deeper than just the cure. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the Emergency Research Center, now transformed into the first Interspecies Academy of Arts and Sciences. Around her, humans and Meridians worked side by side, while representatives from a dozen other civilizations observed and participated in their unique collaboration. "I never imagined this outcome when we first answered your distress call," she admitted to Elder Luminar, who stood beside her watching a group of human students learning to interface with crystal matrices under Amara's guidance. "None of us did," the Elder replied, his crystal form glowing with healthy luminescence. "We thought we were facing the end of our civilization. Instead, we found a new beginning." The revelation of the conspiracy had shaken the galactic order to its core. The Axaran High Council and their allies had been forced to acknowledge their crimes, leading to a complete restructuring of galactic governance. But more importantly, it had sparked a revolution in how different species viewed progress and civilization. "Ambassador Chen," a young voice called out. Dr. Chen turned to see Maria Rodriguez, one of the first human students accepted into the academy, rushing toward them. "We did it. We managed to integrate Earth's musical scales with Meridian crystal harmonics. Listen." The chamber filled with an otherworldly melody as Maria activated a nearby crystal matrix. It was unlike anything ever heard before, a perfect fusion of human musical tradition and Meridian crystal song. Elder Luminar's matrix pulsed with joy at the sound. "Beautiful," he said. "You see, This is what they feared. Not that we would remain different, but that we would learn to combine our differences into something greater than either of us could achieve alone. Across the city, signs of this combination were everywhere. Human architects worked with Meridian artists to create structures that merge Earth's bold designs with Meridian crystal aesthetics. Scientific teams developed new technologies that integrated human intuition and creativity with Meridian harmony and precision. The plague itself had provided the foundation for these advances. Once they understood how it had been engineered to attack the Meridian's crystal matrices, humans and Meridians working together had not only created a cure, but had discovered new applications for crystal technology that neither species had imagined before. Captain Rivera, now Admiral Rivera and Earth's representative to the new Galactic Council, entered the chamber. "The latest reports from the frontier colonies are in," she announced. 3 more emerging civilizations have applied to join the exchange program. The exchange program had been Dr. Chen's idea, a way to ensure that no species would ever again be pressured to abandon their unique path of development. Under the new system, every civilization was encouraged to share their distinctive approaches and perspectives, creating a galaxy that valued diversity rather than conformity. "And the Axarans?" Amara asked, joining them. She had recently been appointed as the head of the Academy's Medical Research Division. "Still adjusting," Rivera replied with a slight smile. "But their younger generation is particularly interested in the arts program. Apparently, there's something appealing about creating beauty instead of just accumulating power." Dr. Chen walked to the observation window. Looking out over the city she had helped save, the crystal spires sang their eternal songs, but now they were accompanied by new harmonies. Human music, Centauri light sculptures, Rigelian quantum art. Each addition made the symphony richer, more complex, more beautiful. "We thought we were just trying to save one species," she mused. "Instead, we ended up changing how the entire galaxy thinks about progress." Perhaps that was the real plague they were trying to prevent, Elder Luminor suggested. "Not the death of our bodies, but the spread of our ideas. The notion that true advancement comes not from domination, but from cooperation. Not from uniformity, but from harmony." A group of young Meridians passed by, their crystal matrices gleaming with health. With them was a team of human scientists, all engaged in animated discussion about a new project combining Earth's traditional healing practices with Meridian crystal therapy. They were the future, a generation that would grow up knowing that difference was not a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. "There will be other challenges," Admiral Rivera warned. "Change never comes easily, especially to those who have held power for so long." "Let them come," Dr. Chen replied confidently. "We've learned that the strongest shield isn't made of weapons or walls, but of different people standing together, each contributing their unique strengths to create something greater than themselves." As if in response, the city's crystal networks hummed in perfect harmony with Earth's newest orbital station. The sound was neither purely human nor purely Meridian, but something new, a symphony of cooperation that reached out to the stars themselves. The sun set over Meridia Prime, its light catching and refracting through the crystal spires in patterns that would have been impossible before humans and Meridians learned to work together. Each beam of light, each note of the eternal song, carried the same message to the galaxy. The future belongs not to those who demand uniformity, but to those who dare to create harmony from difference. And in the growing darkness, the crystal cities shone like beacons of hope, their light reaching out to all those who might follow their example, not to copy, not to conform, but to contribute their own unique notes to the greatest symphony the galaxy had ever known, the song of unity in diversity.